Right. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm honored to introduce today's speaker. Our speaker today is Professor Reza Satchu. Reza Satchu is a senior lecturer in the Entrepreneurship Management Unit at the Harvard Business School, where he teaches the Entrepreneurial Manager, the founder mindset, and launching technology ventures. He's also the founder, managing partner, and majority shareholder of Alignvest Management Corporation, and the founding chairman of Next Canada. For over 20 years, Reza has been both a serial founder and entrepreneurship professor. He has co-founded, built, and managed 6 operating businesses from inception with a variety of industries. These businesses collectively have been sold for or valued in excess of $3 billion. Concurrently, Reza has taught many entrepreneurship courses and created several entrepreneurship programs. Prior to becoming an entrepreneur, Reza was a general partner and managing director at Fenway Partners, a $1.4 billion New York-based private equity firm focused on acquiring leading middle market companies and financial analysts at Merrill Lynch in the high yield finance and restructuring group. Reza serves on the board of directors for Sagicor Financial Corporation, a public life insurance company, as well as several privately held corporations. He also serves on several nonprofit boards, including strategic advisor to the Creative Destruction Lab. Reza has received Canada's Top 40 Under 40 Award and the Management Achievement Award from McGill University. Thank you, everyone, and I'd like to introduce Reza Satchu.
Okay, great. Can you hear me, Shanae?
Perfect.
Okay, excellent. I think the only thing that was missing there is he's remarkably good looking and very charming. That would have made me feel really, really good. So hopefully that'll be put in the next time as well. Anyway, welcome everyone. I'm thrilled to be here. I am a donor to Aspire, and I think the work that Aspire does is fantastic. What I want to spend my time talking about is something that is sort of very near and dear to my heart, and it's about the founder mindset. And so I have a thesis around entrepreneurship and around how one goes about being a founder and why one might want to be a founder, as well as the pitfalls along the way. As Shanae mentioned, I have I started my life in Kenya, so Jambo Abariako to all the Kenyans. I see many of you on the Zoom. I'm a first and family college person. We emigrated to Canada, and over the past 25 years, I've built a variety of businesses, but equally importantly, and purely on a philanthropic basis until I came to Harvard, I have taught entrepreneurship classes and entrepreneurship programs for over 20 years. Okay, so let me start with a very simple question. Okay, and maybe I don't know if there's a poll function that we can do. Let me ask a question. How many of you, and we'll define entrepreneurship in a minute, but let's just start with a very straightforward question. How many of you would like to be an entrepreneur, right? How many of you want to be an entrepreneur? If you can sort of think about your various career and life options, how many of you would say that being an entrepreneur ranks at the very, however you define it, ranks it at the very top of that list? Okay, so invariably, I don't have a poll function here, but what I see is that many of you have raised your hand, okay? And invariably, when I give these speeches, most people do raise their hand. And there are lots of reasons why people want to be an entrepreneur. And what I'd ask you to do is, why don't for those of you who want to be an entrepreneur, and I'd actually argue that almost all of you should want to be an entrepreneur. You can decide whether it's the thing you most want to do. But the question I'd ask you, and maybe you can just put this into chat, which is, what is the most important reason why you want to be an entrepreneur? So what is the driving reason for why you'd want to be an entrepreneur? If you can just quickly just put that in chat.
That should be open.
Okay.
and to create
So
those
if you
changes.
look at this chat, and I appreciate what everyone is saying, I mean, this is a pretty remarkable list of reasons, right? Meaning financial freedom, control, innovation, all these sorts of things. Build your own team, the ability to innovate, all, be unique, influence, all these things are remarkably powerful reasons to want to be entrepreneurs. Okay. But yet I'm going to argue two things. One is those are not at the core the reasons why you should want to be an entrepreneur. And the second thing I'm going to tell you is, unfortunately, despite the fact that there's so many great reasons for you to be an entrepreneur, many of you will not be an entrepreneur, despite the fact that you're listing things that seem so important to you. Okay. And so the question is why? All right. So let's just start with if we can clear hands for a minute. Okay, let's clear the hands. Okay, and so what we're trying to do is I'm going to try to make this interactive, but I want the questions to really be short and to the point and answering what I am asking. Okay, so let's clear all hands for a minute. And so let's start the conversation around why do you want to be an entrepreneur, and what's the thing that's going to block you from being an entrepreneur? Okay. So let's open it up. Who wants to answer that question in a concise manner? Okay, because it's very easy to give me reasons why you want to be an entrepreneur, but the reality is we all know that there are many things that are intensely personal to us or things that exist out there that will block us from achieving this goal. So I can't actually see any hands. I can't imagine you guys are this shy.
Let's see. Let's call on somebody here. I see Abraham. Abraham, if you'd like to unmute and.
Oh, I see the hands now. Okay. Okay, let's roll. Abraham, let's go.
Abraham.
Okay, let's switch. Demetra?
Okay.
Okay, all right, Abraham, let's go.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for giving me this time. I'm very happy to be here, first of all. And I think I want to be an entrepreneur, I think, for sustainability, because I think we all want to be entrepreneur. We want to maybe have our businesses, people who will change the world. But I think sustainability is one of those things that we should focus on when it comes to our reasons for becoming an entrepreneur. And I think one of those things that will not change my plan, or that will not change my career of becoming an entrepreneur, is maybe a life where maybe a luxury life, because I'm a person who, no matter how I live, maybe a life of luxury where maybe clubbing, I'm not a person who can club. I don't club. I don't go to maybe maybe I don't gamble. So these are some of the things I think that are not going to stop me from becoming an entrepreneur, because they are very essential. And these things can break down wealth. These things can make you to change your plan. You don't make it to save money. So I think some of these things won't block my way of becoming an entrepreneur. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, Abraham, and many of you will say this, Abraham's path is, what inspires him is sustainability, but ultimately it's to effectively change the world through that. Okay. And so Demetra, let me ask you, why do you want to be an entrepreneur, and what is going to block you? Like, what are you concerned about that will block you from achieving that goal?
Yeah, I think.
No, I'm moving on. Sorry, Abraham, that's enough.
Oh, okay.
Demetra, go ahead. Okay, can we give the participants power to unmute themselves?
Sorry, one moment.
I think it'll be more effective if we.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Hello. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me out.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So here's the deal.
Demetra.
Everyone should be on mute, but I think they've now got the power to unmute when I call on. Okay. All right. So Demetra, let's go.
Okay.
Super. Thank you so much. So for me, it would be pursuing a sense of agency with everything I'm passionate about. But what's blocking me is definitely lack of identifying resources, whether that might be personal resources or getting into networks. But I do think identifying certain resources that would be useful to me is something that blocks me.
Okay, so I think that's a very honest answer. And I'm going to tell you that the definition that I use for entrepreneurship is the relentless pursuit of opportunity without regard to resources currently controlled. Okay, without regard to resources currently controlled. And so, Dimitri, if you think about that definition, it sort of addresses what you're saying, meaning if you look at every entrepreneur that started a business, in almost all cases, there were others that had far more resources, whether it was information, capital, relationships, than they had to build that business. And if in fact they were constrained by the resources that they had, most businesses would not exist today. Okay, and we can start with Jeff Bezos. I mean, Jeff Bezos had barely read a book when he started Amazon, right? Meaning there was Barnes and Noble that had stores all over the country, had billions of dollars of capital, hundreds of people whose only job was to think about how to sell books. And yet under their nose, Jeff Bezos figured out how to sell books in a much more effective way and build what's become one of the most valuable companies in the world. Okay, Layla, what about you?
Everyone, thank you so much for asking me. So, telling the truth, it's either you work for yourself or either you work for another person just in order to achieve their goals. So why don't you just work for yourself and do what you want to do? Like if you want to help other people, just take the responsibility and help other people. Just work for your dreams, not others' dreams.
Okay, so Layla, I agree. So that is a very compelling passion, right? Which is I would much rather work for my own dreams than be told what to do by someone who I may or may not be aligned with. Okay, so I think everyone would agree that all things being equal, they would much rather work for themselves and have the freedom and the power to execute on their dreams. So the question is, what do you fear will block Layla from achieving that goal?
Myself, I'm kind of scared that at some point of my plan, at my past, I would be a little bit scared to do the next step. But I am kind of I'm scared a little bit of what is going on in my life. But you know, just telling yourself that everything's going to be fine, that it's better to be scared and go where it is scary, is the better way of improving yourself than just to give up on everything. And when you're 60 or 70 years old, thinking, oh, I should have done that one. So I think it's just being an entrepreneur is something that makes you stronger, like your will, your self-esteem, because you go to the point where you are really scared to go. So that is it.
So it's interesting, right? And I'm sure much of what Layla says resonates with many of you, which is this fear concept, right? Which is, and really the fear can be because of external circumstances, not having the money, not having the relationships, but invariably it's also about not having enough information to make the decision you'd like to make, okay? It is not trusting your judgment that in fact, the idea you have is a good idea and one that you should invest time and money where you have very little of each, okay? So let's move on. I'm just gonna give people, I'm not gonna ask people to come back again, okay? And please keep yourself on mute unless I call on you. Okay, Mehmet, go ahead.
Yeah, Assalamualaikum. I think it's I'm quite agree with Lala that as I am living in third world countries, so sometimes I face some sorts of problem, like you said, the capital and the relationships. Besides, I don't have enough information to get in with how actually I should deal with the situation. So based on that, I think in my country I don't have enough access. How should I start? And I don't get enough facility from my government as well. But I am a energetic youth, and I always try to overcome any situation. And you know that's an entrepreneurship. Yeah, is a good one to.
Okay, guys, you know, if you don't mute yourself, we're going to have to, unfortunately, I won't be able to do it the way I want to do it, which is I call you. If people can't mute themselves, I'm going to ask Shanae to mute everyone, and then she'll just pick the students and unmute them. So let's try it one more time. But if we can't do this, we'll go back to the other way.
Yeah, so I think this sorts of problem I am actually facing to hold or to grow my new business, and I'm very passionate. Like I should have my own business and I have my own firm. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. All right. So look, I would tell you, Mehmet, I think you need to be a little bit more profound, meaning I think, yes, there are absolutely external factors that are related to your country that would make the capital harder to flow. But I'm asking a much more profound question, which is not what are the problems that are the external issues, of which there are many anytime you're an entrepreneur, and they may be more extreme in certain countries. What I'm asking is, what is it about you personally? Okay. And we all have these issues, right? Which is going to actually stand in the way of this goal. And I would actually say the goal is not money. I grew up, I grew up without a lot of resources, and neither of my parents went to college. My mom was a secretary and my dad ultimately became a real estate agent. And so what I'd say to you is that for me, when I think about obstacles, what I would argue is that I had the benefit, as many of you do, of having obstacles not of your own choosing, but very serious obstacles in your life where you've had the benefit to learn what you're capable of, okay? And tremendous knowledge that you gained, many of you from a difficult or not an optimal set of circumstances, okay? But ultimately, I think what having been a founder and having worked with so many founders, I think what the real drive to be a founder or an entrepreneur, okay, ultimately is not the money, it's not the power, it's not the influence. It is two things. It is the learning, the exponential learning that you get from being a founder, and we'll talk about that, meaning the learning that you get from being a founder, I believe, is exponential and allows you to develop a judgment muscle that enables you to create real value, to do the thing that I think every human being wants to do, okay, which is to have the freedom to make a positive impact on the people they care about, okay? And what I mean by that is not the people you care about can be your family, it can be your village, it can be your city, it can be the world. But ultimately, the goal, I believe, of every founder is not just to make money or to have resources or to have influence. It is to have the freedom to make a positive impact on the people you care about. And in order to do that, you need two things. You need to have judgment and learning, and you need to have credibility, okay? Both of which you get by being a founder, all right? And so I think we can all agree that goal of sort of freedom to make a positive impact on the people you care about, okay? And you can define people you care about as broadly as the world, okay? Is a noble and great goal, okay? And so everyone, I think, on this Zoom call could say, yes, I would sign up for a life where on my deathbed, someone said, wow, this person positively impacted many people, okay? They're not going to count how much money you have. That will be something that will give you, I think will lead to a feeling of a impactful life. And so the question is, what blocks people from doing this? Okay, what blocks people from doing this? And so I think that what blocks people is entrepreneurship is fraught with uncertainty, right? It is just tremendous uncertainty, okay? Because of course, I have a phrase which says, anyone can make a decision with perfect information, right? If you wait for perfect information, the opportunity will be gone because someone else will need slightly less information and will capitalize on that opportunity. And so by definition, entrepreneurship is fraught with uncertainty. The second thing is, think about every new business that's occurred in your lifetime. In every case, I would argue that you could make a very coherent argument that founder had no right to build that business. Okay, let's start with Elon Musk. Okay, Ford and GM have spent the last 100 years thinking about how to build cars and sell cars to people. And yet here's some guy who's maybe driven a couple of cars, who figures out a whole new way in which to sell cars and a whole new way in which to power cars. Okay. and is now one of the richest men and has built one of the largest businesses in the world, which hopefully will have a real impact around sustainability. Okay. But the point is, Mark Zuckerberg with Facebook, there was nothing about Mark was at Harvard as an undergrad when he got that idea. Okay. But you can go through every founder, and what you will see is invariably that if you tested them based on the resources they had and defined resources as information, capital, relationships, expertise, there is no way they should have built those businesses. Okay, Michael Dell was a student at University of Texas when he went and he created Dell Computer, and his insight was purely, I will actually just sell these computers direct to consumers rather than going through a retail channel. Okay, there were millions of people using computers. There were lots of people thinking about how to sell more computers to people, and yet it took a 19-year-old to come up with this idea and execute on it. Okay, and so the question is, you know, what is it that blocks you? Okay, and why is it that some people are able to get over it? Okay, and actually move into the point of curiosity. All right. So let's agree to a second thing. So the first thing I would say is that the reason at the core that people want to be entrepreneurs, having studied and been an entrepreneur for 25 years, is because they want the freedom to positively impact people. Okay. Let's also agree that being an entrepreneur is really hard. And perhaps the thing that is hardest, okay, is some of the points you've made, which is that you have limited resources. In fact, you have very little resources. Okay. And certainly there are others who, anytime you have an idea, you'd say to yourself, well, surely someone else with more resources would have thought of this idea. Surely Barnes and Noble, the people whose whole job was to think about how to sell books, would have thought about selling books online. Okay. Surely the people at IBM would have thought about going direct to the consumer with their computers. Okay. And so something happens with founders, something happens where they are able to suspend disbelief and trust their curiosity to actually explore ideas. Okay. And here's the thing. None of you are going to come up, or none of you, very few of you are going to come up with an idea that is so revolutionary that you won't have tremendous doubt about someone else with more resources fulfilling the idea. Okay. And all you need to look at is the 10 biggest founders in the world and say to yourself, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, those aren't great ideas. I can assure you there were lots of other people who thought of the same thing. Okay. But yet for some reason they were able to execute on it. There was some reason they were able to unblock and execute on it. So my question is let's all agree that everyone on this call shares something familiar with every founder, obviously with different degrees, okay? Which is that they have very limited resources, okay? And they have less information, less capital than others when they think about an idea, okay? So my question is how do you get over? How do you actually manage this leap, okay? To trust your judgment, trust your instincts around an idea that invariably you could convince yourself that someone else should have capitalized on. So how do you do that? Shanae, is it still me or do you want to do it? What's easier?
I can try to select folks here. Let's see. Okay, things moving a bit. Let's start with Lucy Oveda. Lucy, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself. Sorry, whoever is, again, make sure everybody who is not being called on, please mute yourself.
Okay, go ahead, Lucy.
Okay. I think what would make you
Okay.
can you guys hear me?
Okay, Lucy, I apologize. We're going to go to someone else just to keep things.
Hello?
Yeah.
Sorry, sorry, I'm going to do one thing where we are going to mute everyone. Sorry about that. So we'll move on to someone else. Let's do Akriti? Akriti, if you'd like to unmute. Okay, looks like they will like to unmute. Sorry, Reza, could you unmute yourself as well?
You know what? Here's what
Hello.
we're gonna do. I'm gonna, I
Hello.
would rather make this interactive, but it seems like we're having some challenges. So let me give, I will give you my thoughts and then we'll open it up to questions for the last half an hour. Okay. Because I think this is distracting. Okay. So the question then is, what's going to block you and how are you going to actually be curious about an idea? Okay. So let me give you a couple of examples. All right. So I came back, my parents live in Toronto. Okay. So I came back to visit them. And in Toronto, Canada, there is a highway that goes from the airport to downtown. On that, and the highway starts from the middle of sort of the outskirts of the city. And on that highway, there are literally a dozen self-storage facilities, one after the other. Okay, one after the other. They're single-story self-storage facilities, kind of in the middle of nowhere. And this highway transports hundreds of thousands of people to the city every year, if not more. So I am in my car and I look out and I see these self-storage facilities. And I think the difference between a entrepreneurial founder mindset and a non-founder mindset is what happens next. So I look out and I have the same thought that I am sure hundreds of thousands of other people have had, which is, why are there so many self-storage facilities right next to each other in the outskirts of Toronto? Like, why does that exist? Many people would have had that thought. The difference is I stopped the car and went into these self-storage facilities and asked the questions that would give me information as to whether this was whether there was an opportunity or not. Okay. And when I stopped the car and went into the storage facility, it felt very unsafe. It felt somewhat badly lit. I went to the front desk. No one was there. I had to ring the bell twice. Finally, someone came, sort of disheveled, and came and said, you know, what would you like? And I said, I'd like to store. I'm interested in storing. They said, we're full. We have nothing. Okay. That interaction ended up me building what became the largest self-storage company in Canada. Okay. I won't go through all the details, but the reality is stopping the car and being curious about the idea and not thinking to yourself, well, I don't really know anything about self-storage. There are large competitors, large people who've done a lot about self-storage, but I'm actually going to trust my instinct that there might be an opportunity here, and I'm going to spend 15 minutes of my life exploring it to see if, in fact, there is an opportunity. Okay. So let me give you another example. You know, sometimes ideas come in different manners. Okay. So after the financial crisis, you know, everything had blown up. There sort of anything to do with mortgages had blown up. I happened to know a Turkish fellow named Levent Karaman, who I'd gone to school with, who I thought was brilliant and knew a lot about this. And I didn't know whether or not we could build a business in this space or not, but I knew that this was a fellow that I would want to build a business with in this space. And so we spent 2 weeks going through ideas before we launched a company called KGS. Okay. My point here isn't that, you know, that it's easy coming up with ideas. My point is that you need to actually explore the ideas you have. Okay. And not think to yourself that other people with far more resources must have come up with this idea. Okay. And I can give you so many examples in my life where that is true. All right. So my first point too is you will all have ideas. Just go through your life and every day and think about all the things that could be done more efficiently. Okay. Literally walk through your life with a notepad and think about all the things that could be done more efficiently. Those are problems that need to be solved. Someone will solve those problems, and it should be you. Okay. And the way to solve those problems is to be curious, is to actually say to yourself, okay, maybe there's a problem that exists and maybe I can solve it. as opposed to the instinct, which will be, yeah, that problem might exist, but there's so many other people with more resources that surely would have solved it. Okay. Again, entrepreneurship is the relentless pursuit of opportunity. That's obvious. Everyone knows it's the relentless pursuit of opportunity. The second half is the much more critical part, without regard to resources currently controlled. Okay. It's all about seeing the opportunity and figuring out how you get the resources as quickly and cheaply as possible. Okay. The next point I want to make is this point around commitment. Okay. And this is a very difficult thing for people to do, especially young people. But it's almost impossible to be a founder without doing this. Okay. And I understand all the difficulties around this and the trade-offs. The problem is the world is way too competitive for you to survive as a founder without this. And this is commitment. Okay. It's like going into battle with one arm tied behind your back without commitment, meaning you don't know what you're capable of. Okay. You don't know how hard you can work. You don't know the kinds of information you can gather. You don't know what you're capable of until you commit. Okay. I have this phrase, which is magic happens when you commit. Okay. Because suddenly things happen that you never would have expected to have happened. One, because you learn about what you're capable of. But the second more important thing, or equally important thing, is that people are far more willing to help founders that are committed. Okay. Meaning they see the desperation in your eyes. They see the fear. They see the ambition. They see the tenacity. They see the commitment. And so with that, they throw a lifeline. Now, I'm not suggesting this happens all the time. What I am suggesting, however, is that no one is able to build a business or found anything of significance without commitment. Okay. And so, it is absolutely true. When I think about those founders that have built things of significance, the magic only happened when they committed. Okay. And so obviously there are good things and bad things that happen, but the entrepreneurs seek volatility. Okay. Because in those volatile moments, great things can happen. Okay. And now that volatility only happens when you commit. Okay. So I want you to think hard about this commitment piece. Okay. In terms of, I made this point around what will block people in terms of, because ultimately what needs to happen as a founder is you have to trust your judgment. You have to trust your judgment that the idea is good. You have to trust your judgment that you should actually commit and give up a full-time job. You have to trust your judgment around whether you should co-found with someone. You have to trust your judgment around who your first customer is going to be. You have to trust your judgment around who your investors are going to be. It requires judgment. Okay. And the argument I would make is that as a founder, you are constantly making decisions. Okay. It can be as simple as, where should my office be? But ultimately you're making that decision, not the person you're working for. And in that decision-making, you learn a tremendous amount. Okay. So learning, to me, especially early in your life, is all about making consequential decisions that you are accountable for. Okay. What happens when you make consequential decisions that you are accountable for? And a consequential decision can be, should I spend $50 to market my product? Should I actually have this store be the place where I market my product? These are decisions that are consequential to you and that you are fully accountable for. When you make decisions like that, regardless of whether they are proven right or wrong, you start testing something, which is the most important thing you can do as a young person, which is your judgment. Okay. By making those decisions, you learn to trust your judgment. You know where your judgment is flawed and you know where your judgment is not. And in those moments of those difficult decisions where you're forced to trust your judgment, it's like a muscle. It's like going to the gym and working on your bicep muscle. Okay. It's the same thing. You're working on a much more important muscle, which is your judgment muscle. Okay. And the only way you work on your judgment muscle is by actually making decisions. Okay. And the thing about it, the reason it's a decision right? If it was obvious, it's not a decision. Okay, the reason it's a decision is because it involves risk. Okay, and the reality is about risk. People have this incredibly flawed view of what risk, that entrepreneurs love risk. It is not true. Entrepreneurs calculate risk all the time. They determine risk all the time. I can't tell you with my business how often I think about risk. Okay, the difference between an entrepreneur and a non-entrepreneur when it comes to risk is they are not paralyzed by risk. They make decisions in the face of risk. They realize that not making a decision is a decision, which is what so many people do when confronted with imperfect information, which is they just stay the course and stay paralyzed. And what they don't realize is that is actually a decision. It just feels much safer. And so this concept of risk is a very important thing where I want to disabuse you of the notion that entrepreneurs love risk. Okay, we do not love risk. What we are capable of, however, is calculating risk, thinking hard about risk, and then trusting our judgment to make a decision. Okay, and that's the core. When I talk about the founder mindset, is that you effectively start with commitment, and then you go to this learning point. Okay, commitment provides you with the opportunity to actually learn. Okay, and what you're learning is to trust your judgment. And the better your judgment gets, the better those decisions you make as a founder. I want to talk about a couple of other things. Okay, and I could have probably benefited this earlier in my life. Okay, we are all products of our childhood. Okay, so I there are 900 plus of you here. I have I have no idea what each of your trajectory has been to get here. Okay, but what I'd say is that trajectory, that childhood experience that you've had, is going to be incredibly relevant to the kind of person you will be, both positive and negative. Okay, so I would encourage you to think hard about what got you here. Okay, what are the things that are incredibly positive, and what are the demons that you have? Okay, because I think the more you can think about how to deal with those things, the more effective of a leader you will be. Okay, and the point I would make here is I remember thinking to myself, wow, I was quite happy in Kenya, and then suddenly, at the age of 8, we moved to this country. I'd never been outside of Kenya beforehand. It snows. I don't know anyone. I look different than the other people. I speak with a different accent, all these sorts of things. And everyone else could walk to school. We had to bus to school, all this sort of stuff. And upon reflection, what I would tell you is that set of obstacles was probably the most critically important thing to my brother and me. Okay, and my brother now runs a very successful production media company in LA. And so again, I would, for those of you, and many of you have done this, I know this, okay, have had a difficult experience, okay, and I can't imagine how difficult some of it can be, but I would ask you to reframe that difficulty as opposed to seeing yourselves as in some way hindered or in some way disenfranchised. I would ask you to reflect on what you have learned through that set of experiences, okay? And what you've learned is that you can overcome those experiences, that you can learn from those experiences, and that you have a tenacity about you that would serve you very well as you think about the next phase of your life, okay? And so I often have, I have this saying that obstacles early in your life, not of your own choosing, can prove to be incredibly beneficial to you later in your life, okay? Because tough decisions later in your life may not seem that tough when you think about the things that you might have overcome earlier in your life. Okay, so I would ask you to think hard about what that looks like. Okay, the other thing I want to talk about is this sort of confidence and capabilities point. Okay, so I've been teaching for a long time, and what I have found is that there are many people who will not exert their opinion, will not do something, will not execute on an idea, will not have the confidence to do those things until they feel like they have the capability. Okay. And so let's take it to an extreme. There would be many people who would look at that self-storage site and say, I shouldn't stop the car because I have no capability to evaluate whether these facilities should be here or not. Right. So a logical person would say, you know what, there's no point in stopping the car. Jeff Bezos, a logical person, would have said, you know what, why would I think about selling books in a completely different way? Surely, you know, the brilliant people at Barnes & Noble had thought of that. And so what I would argue in terms of a founder mindset is your confidence has to be at all times slightly greater or greater than your capabilities. Okay, which I know is a controversial thing because most people would say the opposite. I think it's completely wrong. Okay, that doesn't mean that you are arrogant. That doesn't mean that you make silly decisions. That means that that gap between confidence and capabilities is what's called judgment. Okay, if you imagine the opposite, which is that your capabilities have to far outweigh your confidence, it would effectively mean that you're not trusting your judgment in any way, right? Because your capabilities are so strong that anyone would make that decision. Okay. The other thing is in those points where you stretch yourself between capabilities and confidence, there is tremendous learning in that stretch, like tremendous learning. And what happens is your capabilities grow exponentially because of that stretch. You suddenly realize what you are capable of, okay? Because you trust your judgment and start increasing your confidence. And so I would encourage all of you. That doesn't mean that you don't maximize your capabilities. You don't, do the things you need to do. But I would actually argue that the greatest learning is in that stretch between your capabilities and your confidence. And your confidence should always be slightly above your capabilities. And it's in that gap where you learn the most. Okay, because in that gap is where you're forced to do the thing I most want you to do, which is to trust your judgment. Okay, because you're not sure. And in those moments, whether you're right or wrong, you will learn a tremendous amount. You will learn a tremendous amount, thereby increasing your capabilities, which in turn should increase your confidence, which should just be a repeat and recycle cycle over and over again, such that both of them increase dramatically and exponentially over time. This concept of, let me give you another example, okay? And look, obviously these are examples which some of you may think are so far removed from you, but they're my life. So I apologize if it seems far removed, but I think the idea behind it should resonate, okay? So my first business, my brother and I sold, and I came back to Canada. And I just thought to myself, I want to have the freedom to have a positive impact on the people I cared about. And so the reason I teach is because that is and I wanted to do it not when I was 70, but when I was 30. And so the reason I do, the reason I've invested so much time, money, and energy into teaching is because it's my way of providing a positive impact on people that I care about, because I think that if I can create people who found and build businesses, that will ultimately help a larger group of people by increasing their standard of living, broadly speaking, okay? And so some would say, well, Reza, how have you taught for 25 years, given that at the time I'd never taught beforehand, and that I have no PhD or no qualifications to teach. And it's as simple as, I have one phrase, stop the car. My other phrase is knock on the door. So I had this idea. I'm walking along St. George Street, which is the street opposite University of Toronto. And I see that I'm in front of the president's office, and I knock on the president's door, and somehow get into his office and say, I want to teach a class. And he says, well, who are you? So I tell him, and he says, well, why would I ever let you teach a class? Have you taught a class beforehand? I said, no. He said, do you have a PhD? I said, no. I said, but I think this will be one of the best classes that University of Toronto will have. He said, well, why don't I just let you guest lecture? I said, no, I don't want to guest lecture. I want to commit to this, and I want to create my own class that's fully accredited and that is part of the department. Okay. My point here is, and then, you know, he took a risk on me because I think he saw the commitment from me and he thought, okay, this is a guy that's going to really try his best to do it. He's not dilly-dallying. He is committed to making this happen in a way that many other entrepreneurs aren't, who just want to teach a class. Okay. I was willing to develop a whole course. My point being that there are moments in your life, and they're not as plentiful as you may think, okay, where you can substantially change the trajectory of your impact. Okay. And whether it's stopping the car and being curious about an idea, whether it's knocking on the door and sort of saying, can I make this happen? At the end of the day, the worst thing that could have happened is that I was 15 minutes later to see my parents, or that I had a 10-minute conversation, or not even a 10-minute, or I just got turned away after a minute at University of Toronto. Okay. But it's not that costly to my life. Okay. Especially when I think of the upside of what may happen. Okay. The other thing I want to talk about is this concept of how you think about risk around being an entrepreneur. Okay. So we've talked about calculating risk, but I want to talk about it sort of more personally. Okay. So I am acutely aware that many of you are either, you know, need the money to live, or supporting your families, have tremendous financial pressure. Okay. And so it makes this hard, right? It makes this decision of being an entrepreneur hard, because you could go get a full-time job that will pay you a salary, and although it may not lead you to great things, it will solve the immediate problem, which is, how do I ensure that I can support myself and my family? Okay. And look, these are very reasonable issues. What I'd ask you to do is to think about two things when you make that decision. Okay. The first is, I find that people who make that decision, they invariably focus solely on the downside and do not think at all about what the upside looks like, either in terms of money or freedom or power or whatever it may be, of being a founder. Okay. And I'm not suggesting it's easy. I am just suggesting that there is a possibility that there is a tremendous upside node there for you. And so I would just think hard about that upside node and what that looks like when you think through it. Okay. The second thing I would say is, in your job, if you take those jobs, I ask you to have an entrepreneurial mindset when you take those jobs. Okay. In many ways, what you will see in those jobs is tremendous inefficiencies. Okay. Where there are massive problems, customers aren't getting what they should be getting, suppliers aren't getting what they should be getting. And I would ask you to have an entrepreneurial founder mindset where you are curious, even as an employee, as to why these things are happening, and ask questions. Okay. Ask questions as to why this is happening. All right. Okay. So go to that self-storage facility, hang out with the manager, ask questions, talk to the customers. Where did you come from? Why are you driving so far? Does this place feel safe? Are you a residential customer or commercial? Whatever it may be. Okay. And what you will find is, by having that entrepreneurial mindset, it will lower the perceived risk to you of taking advantage of a problem that you might see. Okay. So let me give you another story around this. Okay. I have a friend, someone I know, Bob Zider. Okay. Bob, he liked to golf. Okay. He liked to golf. And so he's also an engineer. He came up with a golf club that he believed could hit a ball 5 or 6 yards further. Now, for those of you who don't golf, and I hope none of you golf, because until you've made it, it's a complete waste of time. Okay. It's like not worth the time or the energy to waste 5 hours of your life golfing and hitting a silly ball. You have more important things to do. But for those of you that do golf, you will know that the ability to hit a ball 5 yards further, although it sounds very small, is tremendous. Okay. Golf attracts a very high household income demographic. Lots of people with a lot of money want to golf. And if they can hit a ball 5 yards further, they would buy that club and pay a lot more for it. Okay. So Bob Zider invents this club and he has no way of distributing it. So he goes to the world's biggest golf manufacturer, Callaway. who's just signed up Tiger Woods. Callaway has got a 25% market share. They have 400 engineers whose only job in life is to figure out how to hit a ball further. And this guy, Bob Sider, shows up. Okay. And they, the head of sales says, okay, well, why don't you talk to our 5 engineers and prove it that it's better. Okay. So I'm telling you the story for a reason. He goes and shows his club to 5 engineers. 2 of them say it's terrible. Does nothing. 2 of them say it's no better than what we have. And 1 of them says it's fantastic. Okay. So if we were in my class, we would debate this. And here's the thing. Okay. It is not even your takeaway from that as a founder is so obvious. Okay. It is so obvious. Okay. It is so obvious. You have an incredible product. Okay, because the incentives are such that everyone at Callaway would tell you that you don't have a good product. Because they've spent hundreds of millions of dollars and time to come up with this product. And all it takes is 1 to tell you that it's great. Now, most people hear that story and say, well, it's clear that the product isn't that great. A founder hears that story and knows that it's a gold mine. They know it's a gold mine, okay? And so this is the kind of thing that happens with founders where the information is incredibly uncertain, but you have to trust your judgment. And when you get information like that, right, where 1 person is saying it's great and 4 are saying there's nothing there, you've got to think to yourself, what are the underlying incentives? What's happening there? Does it mean more that 1 person said it's great versus 4 people saying it's not? Okay. And so my point is as a founder, you're continuing to calibrate risk in situations like this where you have to make decisions, okay? And they need to be as clear as possible, all right? The other point that that I would ask you to think about is, you know, as a founder, you invariably go through tremendous adversity, okay? Meaning it is never straight and to the right, okay? And in many ways, that makes the gain so plausible, right? Meaning that in many ways, the reason founders get so much if it works in terms of learning, money, impact, all this stuff is because they have to go through a lot and they have to overcome a lot of adversity. And that adversity can be that you can't raise money, your customers are hard to get, you're having co-founder strife, whatever it may be. There's just tremendous adversity, okay? And certainly if I think about my businesses, I can tell you that there's been tremendous adversity. And so the question is, how do you get through that adversity? Also, you've got hundreds of people, far more people telling you not to do what you're doing than telling you to do what you're doing. And I'll take an extreme. When you go and pitch your idea to an investor, 50 to 1 will say no. Okay, for every 1 that says yes, 50 will say no, 100 will say no. Okay, so you are Starbucks. Howard Schultz had this idea around Starbucks, which he just copied from Europe, right? I mean, again, I'm just telling you all these ideas. There's nothing brilliant. Okay, he went to a cafe in Italy, saw what was happening. He said, why can't I replicate this in the US? But my point is, he went to 250 investors with the concept of Starbucks. Every one of them turned him down. Every one of them. Okay. And so as an entrepreneur, you are continually faced with rejection. And so the question is how do you manage through it? All right. And so in the specific point of investors, right, what you as a founder have to believe is that you have thought about this problem far more than an investor that spent 30 minutes thinking about this problem, right? Meaning that investor is reacting to the problem based on you positioning it for a 30 to 60 minute meeting. In no way does that change my mind as to whether the problem is one worth solving or not. Okay. There are all sorts of reasons why an investor can say no. Okay. They don't like you. They woke up on the wrong side of the bed. They've got a portfolio that's full. Who knows? Who knows? But they'll be more than happy to pontificate and give you advice. And what you have to do as a founder is realize that at the end of the day, this is your idea. You've thought way more about it. There's going to be tremendous obstacles and tremendous adversity. And part of the game is staying alive. Okay. Staying in the game. Okay. And frankly, the reason that's efficient is all your competitors or all others will drop out. Okay. Such that a few of you will actually hit the promised land. Okay. I do want to, so this was something which I think is quite, as an entrepreneur, is quite important, is as a founder, I think distinct from an employee, you feel a real personal connection to the idea you're solving, right? Many of you, if you talk to me about your idea, I think you'd feel, you'd articulate in a manner that has a real personal connection and real emotion around it. And that emotion can be tremendously valuable because it shows commitment, it shows passion, it'll get you through the difficult times. But it can also be a problem, okay? And so I would encourage you to think hard about, so there's a phrase that Viktor Frankl has, which is the gap between stimulus and response is freedom, okay? So the gap between stimulus and response is freedom. So and what I mean by that is, as a founder, you are constantly being stimulated, okay? With extreme things. You just lost a customer. You're running out of cash. Your top employee has to leave, whatever it may be. And there is an incredible desire as a founder to just respond very quickly and very emotionally. And I will tell you, some of my biggest mistakes have been not wallowing in that gap. Okay. And what that gap is that moment where you let that feeling go through you. You feel that pain, you feel that desperation, it goes through you. And the freedom is, once it goes through you, is to think about how to respond in the most effective way, as opposed to respond emotionally right away. Okay. So this is sort of part of how I think about the founder mindset, is there's this incredible passion and emotion that a founder has, but you need to temper that when it comes to decision making, in terms of making sure that you're not responding to stimulus immediately in an emotional manner, but rather wallowing in that gap, thinking hard about how to respond, and then choosing how to respond. Okay. The other thing I want to talk about is this concept that I see a lot of people discuss, which is one last thing around tension and adversity. Okay. I want, as a founder, and this is going to sound odd, tension and adversity is your friend. Okay. It is your friend. I know to many of you, this seems really difficult to process because you want a life full of comfort, or not, that's what you strive for. The way to get there as a founder is to live a life with a lot of tension and discomfort. And what I mean by that is pushing yourself in terms of learning things that you wouldn't otherwise learn, pushing yourself to make decisions where it feels uncomfortable. Okay. But the other thing I would say is that as a founder, you will constantly be trying to get deals done, whether it's with investors, with customers, whoever it may be. The power you have in a conversation like that, where you feel like you have very little power because you're just one person in a PowerPoint deck, okay? The power you have is to walk away, okay? Never underestimate how valuable it is to walk away, all right? Because what it conveys is a level of confidence in your ideas, in your path, that provides the person you're walking away with a sense of conviction that they should follow and chase. Okay, it's just like love, right? It's just like love, okay? You know that someone's truly committed to you when they decide that this is what they want to do, okay? And so my point is the power you do have as a founder, okay, is the power to walk away, all right? And I know that seems very counterintuitive, but in walking away, you signal confidence, okay, in your idea. You signal that you're willing to move, and you also signal to the other party that they should follow, because at the end of the day, you have conviction around your idea. Okay, so I would ask you to think hard about that. Okay, I want to talk quickly about, and I'll open up the questions in 4 minutes. Okay, I want to talk about founder market fit. Okay, which is this big concept people are talking about, which is that founders should have specific, unique expertise around the idea that they have, and they should only pursue an idea if they have a competitive advantage around this idea. Now, it will not shock you that I think that is completely false. Okay, like completely false. And it is I hope you find that bullseye. I really do. Okay, like I really do hope you find that bullseye. But the idea that you will only become a founder if you find that bullseye, I think is a real mistake. And I've given you lots of examples of founders who wanted to live an entrepreneurial life, who wanted to do it in order to have the freedom to have a positive impact on people, but didn't hold themselves to a standard where they had to have a unique passion or a unique competitive advantage around the idea. Okay, so I would encourage you, again, to explore your ideas based on your own curiosity, as opposed to either resources that you currently control or specific unique advantages that you might have, because I think you'll wait decades before you'll have those unique advantages as you determine them. Okay. Okay. In terms of impact, you know, I have the way I think about founders, I think that you are training judgment, right, at the core, which I think is actually the most powerful learning skill, by making consequential decisions that you're accountable for. You're acutely aware that you can't do the thing you want to do without committing. Okay, it is just too hard. But when you do commit, magic happens, because you learn things that you wouldn't have otherwise learned, and people help you in manners that you wouldn't otherwise have, with the goal that you can have a positive impact earlier in your life than you would otherwise. Okay. And so for me, at the end of the day, a life where you don't have a responsibility to have a positive impact on people is an unfulfilled life. Okay. And meaning there is no greater privilege than a feeling that you can help people make better decisions, and a feeling that you can, hopefully in a small way, help people make a positive impact on them. And so what I'd encourage you to do is to think hard about what that path looks like for you. I'd also say there is no one style to being a founder. Okay, meaning I know many of you meet people like me and you're like, well, they all sound the same. They sound like they know what they're doing. They're so confident. They speak loudly, all this sort of stuff, right? And so I need to do that. Here's what I'd say. None of us started this way, okay? Many of us started exactly the way you started, which is fraught with uncertainty, scared of public speaking, uncomfortable with uncomfortable situations, all this sort of stuff. But we forced ourselves to put ourselves in those situations, which is what I would ask you to do as well. I want you to be authentic to who you are. I've never seen a founder be successful by being inauthentic. It doesn't happen, because anyone can see through it. A customer can see through it. An investor can see through it. A co-founder or employee can see through it. And so figure out what your style is and be authentic to it. Okay. It will get you through the toughest moments, and will in fact be a strength. Okay. And at the end of the day, I hope what this path will lead to is a path where you will feel fulfilled, and perhaps equally importantly, that the people you care about, you will have impacted in a positive manner. Okay. So with that, let me pause and open it up to questions. And so there are a lot of questions. And so what I'd ask you to do is to ask a question that is relevant, not just to yourself, but to, to as many people as you think it'd be relevant to on this call. Okay. So we have 19 minutes. So let's go ahead and do that.
Sure. Just as a quick interruption, I just wanted to share the attendance form in the chat. So you'll see right here. This form will be open until the end of the day today. So you can do this now, or you can do this after the seminar, but it will be there. But yes, we can now open for questions. Reza, if you want to call on some folks, or I can call on some
great.
folks.
Okay, so we'll have some questions, and I'll close at around 11:30 for a minute or two. Okay, so let's go. Okay, Alif Erkan. Alif, can you unmute yourself or does Shanae need to do that?
Sorry, I'm just trying to find him. Alif, let's see. All right, Alif, if you could unmute yourself.
Okay.
Hello.
Hi.
I didn't expect that.
Your hand is up, Alif. So I'm going to call on people whose hands are up.
Yes. Okay. So you were asking about the tendency, the obstacles, right?
Alif, if you have a question, you can go ahead and ask now, but if you don't have a question, you can lower your hand and we can call on someone else if you don't have a question.
Actually, I don't have a question. I'm just
Okay,
I
so
just love your
Alif, that's fine.
chat.
Alif, let's put you on mute. That's okay. Let's go to someone else then. Okay, so people should only have their hands up if they actually have a question, right? Okay, so Heath.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, it's really great I got this chance to speak. So let's start with some example and then go to my question. It's a Henry Ford has this quote when he said, if I ask a person what he wants, he only says he needs a really fast horse. He doesn't imagine about a four-wheel car. I have to do this, and he accepts it. This is the mindset of an entrepreneur. I think you got it. Yeah. Didn't you understand, or should I?
Sorry, Heath, I'm not sure I'm understanding your question. Can you just ask me a specific question, please?
No, I just want to start with an example and then ask the question.
Okay, let's move on. Let's just stick with questions, and then we'll because I think we're losing time here. So I'm happy to answer questions, and we can go from there. Okay, Serkan, please give me a question.
Hi, Serkan, if you can unmute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I just want to say you were talking about some confidence and taking some risk. And we also try to take risk and be in a confidence. I just wonder what's your confidence? How did you get this confidence? Because we're just trying to improve ourselves, but I'm not sure this confidence just trying to be successful. Because if we're successful, we could have having a confidence. What's your idea about it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think that's a good question because, of course, so let me just start with, I don't think I had a lot of confidence early in my life. Okay, and so the question is how does one develop confidence? And so I think the thing I would encourage you to do, and the thing that I think I did, was I started anytime I was uncomfortable, I trained myself to dive into that discomfort. Okay, however small that discomfort was. And we're not talking about big things, we're talking about little things. Okay, and so I think that the benefit of pushing yourself into points of discomfort is invariably you learn the most in those points, because even if you fail, okay, you've learned something in that failure such that the next time you try it, your probability of success is greater. But invariably you will succeed, because I'm not talking about massive leaps into discomfort. I'm talking about small things. Okay, small things, giving your opinion in a conversation where you don't need to internally think to yourself, you have to be perfectly right. Okay, where you start trusting your judgment. And so I would encourage all of you to do the small things that are uncomfortable first, and you will start building your confidence. And at the end of the day, confidence is very tied into the trust you have in your judgment. And so start small, and whatever those weaknesses you have, or whatever those points of discomfort you have, address them early in your life. Okay, address them early in your life in a small manner. And over time, your confidence will increase. Okay. And so, you know, it will shock you, but it's absolutely true. You know, in my 20s, I would have been deathly scared of giving a speech. Like I just couldn't do it. It wouldn't have been something that I would ever imagine I could do. Okay. And so there are lots of, my point is the way I got there was I started just doing small things. Okay. And whatever those things are, you should figure out what those things feel uncomfortable and address them purely by trying to see whether or not you can make progress. And what you'll find is through those points of discomfort, you'll increase your confidence. Okay, let's go on. Catherine Liana.
Hi, I hope that you can hear me.
Sure
My
can.
question concerns resources, because you've said that there are different ways that we can find that resource. What would you recommend, you know, at first, where to go to find that resource? Because that's one of the first and basic steps that we need.
Yeah. Okay. So it depends from what context, but let's assume that the context is you have an idea. Okay. All right. So I tell you the most important thing you can do as a founder that just has an idea and nothing else is go talk to potential customers immediately. Go talk to potential customers, however you define them, that would be beneficiaries of that idea. Okay. So that you can test your problem and see whether there is a real pain there or not. Okay. And so at the end of the day, what a founder has to do early on is get information for nothing, get valuable information as cheaply as possible, because you don't have any money, right? You don't have any money. So you need to get information. And the best place to get information is from customers. And so, you know, in my self-storage example, that was literally me sitting at the self-storage facility, talking to customers. Okay. Literally just talking to customers and getting tremendous insights. And so I would say the first thing you need to do in terms of resources is get information as cheaply as possible to validate and morph your idea such that you get conviction to commit to that idea. And that customer information invariably, depending on your charm and your tenacity, can be received for free. Okay. And so what I'd argue is that the first set of a founder is thinking hard about where can I get information for free and that is valuable. And invariably that is from customers. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so Bushra. BUSHRA.
Hello, sir. Thank you for this opportunity. So throughout this discussion, I have been hearing the founder mindset a lot. So if you could share some tips on how we could develop our founder's mindset, that was my first question. And my second question was, what were the habits that you practiced in your 20s that helped you to develop your founder's mindset? Thank you.
Okay, so Bushra, I'm going to have a book out called The Founder Mindset, which I hope you will read shortly. Okay, so that'll capture a lot of these. So look, it's what I've said. I think that the founder mindset at its core is about trusting your judgment. Okay, because at the end of the day, a founder is successful if they make more right decisions than wrong decisions, and they will only do that if they exhibit strong judgment. So the question is how do you get the confidence to trust your judgment? And so in my 20s, I would say I sought positions of discomfort. Okay. I looked for positions where I was not comfortable. All right. Where I was being stretched, where there was real risk of failure, where I was surrounded by people who knew more, who had more resources, all these sorts of things where I could learn as much as possible and start trusting my judgment. And so it's as simple as look for points of discomfort for you. Okay. Like whatever it may be, you know, you have a hard time asking for the order, or you have a hard time expressing your opinion, whatever it may be, and force yourself to do those things in relatively safe environments and increasingly unsafe or uncomfortable environments. And so I think if I had to just summarize my 20s, I would say it was all about seeking points of discomfort and forcing myself to learn as much as possible. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, is it MD Ruman Ahmed? Sinead, do you see that? MD RUMON?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Hello,
There you go.
am I audible?
You are, yes.
Well, thank you, Professor Reza, for having me such an amazing session. That was a very learning. My question is that you have mentioned that you have come from Kenya and then shifted to Canada, and that transitional period wasn't easy. We know that whenever you were starting and whenever you were teaching in one of the best university in the world, at the same time you were an entrepreneur. So my question is that how you balanced those two difficult tasks, which seem very difficult to those who are starting, or some of us even can't aspire to become so much aspirant.
So, sorry, I apologize. You broke up a little bit. So Ramon, I just ask me the question once again.
I asked you that how did you manage the workload that required you to become an entrepreneur at the same time teaching in the teaching at Harvard?
Okay. Okay, so look, first of all, there is nothing special or unique about me, okay? I can promise you that all of you can have this trajectory or better, okay? So I don't think there's anything, like, I don't think there was any sort of, you know, divine right here. I think that certainly, you know, people say, you know, how much does luck play a role? So I think luck is important, but as a founder, the difference between luck in a non-founder role and in a founder role is what you want is to be smart and lucky, right? Such that if luck happens, disproportionately incredible things can happen, right? Meaning, you know, if you're working in a job and you get lucky, you might get promoted a year early. If you're a founder and you get lucky and you get a customer, you might build a, you know, a business that survives for a long period of time and creates a lot of value. And so I think in terms of your second question around managing and balancing, you know, I've got three priorities in my life: my family, my businesses, and my teaching. All right. And so that might seem like a lot, but I'm very focused on all three of those things, right? I've been sort of, you know, married to the same person for over 25 years. I've got three incredible kids and a broader family that I care a lot about. But they all reinforce each other. And so in many ways, some would say, well, Reza, you could have been a better entrepreneur had you not been a teacher, right? Because obviously it took time away from my businesses, but it gave me a sense of joy that I wouldn't have had otherwise. And so for me, it works, okay? Like it's, you know, maybe if I leave a little money on the table, that's okay, because along the way, hopefully I can get what I call psychic income, which is a feeling that I'm helping people. And so I would also say to this point, if I thought about some of my biggest sort of a big regret I would have is the flip side of this question, which is, you know, as a founder, it's very easy to not be as kind as you'd like, right? Because you are busy, you're making decisions. And what I'd say to you almost invariably is kindness is actually a real power. That doesn't mean that I don't hold my students to a very high expectation and that I'm not going to push them super hard. But in that is kindness, because I know that if I push them, they might accomplish the things that they might otherwise not have thought they were capable of. And so I would encourage you, as you're a founder, to think hard about the role that kindness plays and the value that it might give to you. Okay, let's go to okay, Wafa. Where are you from, Wafa?
Wafa, you can go ahead and unmute.
Yeah.
Hi, how are you? I'm actually from Amarillo, Texas, so in the US.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah, and my question is kind of centered around something that you said about trusting your judgment. So I know this is great when the outcome is like really great or good even, but I wanted to ask if you have any advice for someone who trusted their judgment and the outcome was negative. So either they lost a lot of money and then that led to like a lot of consequences, just in that sort of sense.
Yeah. So look, I think that there is no question that when you trust your judgment, and the reason it's called judgment is because there's real possibility of failure, right? And so there are lots of decisions I've made where I've trusted my judgment where it has not been successful, where it has been fraught with failure. And I think we got to start with sort of an existential question, right? Which is, you know, on your deathbed, okay? And this is sort of a question I ask for people when they're deciding whether they want to be a founder or not. You sort of ask yourself, let's say I only had, you know, there are three outcomes of a founder. You try and succeed, you try and fail, or you never try at all, okay? And so what never try at all is you just never actually use it as a metaphor, but let's say be a founder, okay? So the real question I have for people is, let's eliminate try and succeed, okay? Which is, to your point, Wafa, there's lots of times where you try, you trust your judgment, it doesn't succeed. And so a threshold question is on your deathbed, would you rather have not tried at all or have tried and failed? Which is a very extreme question to ask. And I would argue that most people who want to be founders on their deathbed would have tried and failed, okay? Because the only thing worse than trying and failing is not trying at all. And of course, we also know that life is not just a one-play act, okay? Meaning it is not as extreme as that. And in that failure, you learn something, okay? You learn something. And the reality is what you learn will enable you to try and succeed with greater probability the next time, okay? And so, but I would just push it back on you and just ask yourself whether you would have rather tried and failed than not tried at all. And realize that in that failure, there is learning. And I don't diminish the fact that it can be very hard and very costly. But there is also a sliver of hope that it can work. And there's tremendous learning that the next time it'll work. And so I would again, just make sure you think through the trade-offs. I'll ask one more, I'll take one more question and then we'll close. Okay. Who's got a good question? Give me a smile if you have a good question. All right, Saval, you're smiling. It's SEVVAL.
Sorry, SEVVAL.
I think it's an S. You see it? SEVVAL. What last name is YURT?
You can go ahead and unmute now.
So Saval, unmute yourself. Okay, let's roll.
First of all, I'm not quite sure that my question is too good for the last question that I'm asking, but first of all, thank you being in here. My question is, you said that you have to trust your judgment, but you know, I'm thinking I'm successful when I do this, but you know, in life, sometimes we can feel like I'm alone with this. No one's believing in what I'm doing or anything in this nature. My question is, how did you get yourself out of this situation and get to the point where you're believing in yourself?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So look, I think it is a mistake to think that entrepreneurs aren't racked by self-doubt, right? Like it'd be very easy for me to say that, oh, I just knew, it was all so obvious, no one else could see it. It's just not true, right? It is just not true. The reality is there is tremendous self-doubt as an entrepreneur because ultimately it's your decision, right? There's no one else to blame or to count on, it's you. And so self-doubt is a part of life for being a founder. So the question is how do you get over it and act and make decisions when you have self-doubt? And so what I would tell you is the first thing you have to believe is that it's possible, right? If you as a founder don't believe what you're doing is possible, you have no chance. So you have to believe it's possible. And so the question is, why would you believe it's possible? Well, you have to have a view that you yourself can actually pull this off. You have to have a view that the problem you're solving is meaningful enough and worth solving that customers will pay for it. You also have to have a view that you can withstand the tremendous number of no's and negatives that you will get as a founder. And so then the question is, how do you do that? And it's by actually getting the information you need as cheaply as possible. And I've given you one idea, which is going and talk to customers. Okay. It is also by committing. And I understand how difficult it is for many of you to commit given your responsibilities. But you also need to know that no one is smart enough to build anything of consequence without committing. Okay. Because the magic doesn't happen unless you commit. All right. And so I'll leave you with sort of some last thoughts, which is, I want you to think about, your lives in a manner where you're maximizing learning. Okay. If you maximize learning, great things will happen. Okay. The argument I will make to you is the place where you maximize learning is being a founder. Okay. Because the way I identify learning is making consequential decisions that you're accountable for, which ultimately will lead to better judgment, such that you will be able to build things of consequences and be in a position where you can do the thing that that all of us most want to do. That is a fundamental human desire, which is the freedom to have a positive impact on as many people as possible. Okay. So with that, I think I wish you guys well. I am sure the road will be bumpy, but I would ask you to have confidence in yourselves, always be more confident than you are capable. Okay. Take some calculated risks to push yourselves into discomfort, and you'll be surprised what you're capable of. Okay. So with that, I'll say goodbye. Good luck. I hope our paths will cross.
Thank you so much again, Reza, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Again, the attendance link is in the chat. Please make sure that you fill that out before the end of the day today. The form will close at the end of the day today. So please make sure that you are filling out that form before the end of the day, again, to make sure that you receive your attendance for this seminar. Thank you also very much, and you have a great day.
Okay, thanks everyone.